Tab TV presents Taking Up Space, a discussion about the reinvention of dance education in Canada. A discussion led by Rhonda Roberts Smid, featuring Dr. Blessyl Buan, Linette Doherty, Nicole Hamilton, and Shawn Byfield. How do we make change? How do we move forward? Taking Up Space starts now. Hi, welcome to Tab TV. My name is Rhonda Roberts Smid, and this episode is one that I have been waiting to bring to you. We're talking about dance today, and we're not just talking about dance and dance styles. We are talking about the industry itself. And right now, over COVID, what can we do to reinvent or improve some of the things that we see happening in this industry when it comes to our children? Now, this is not meant to divide. By any means, I am not an expert on what it takes to run a school or what it takes to be a teacher. But what I do know is that we all ultimately want the same thing. We want our kids to enjoy and love dance, and we want them to stay in it for the long haul. So I'm hoping what I bring to you today will give you ideas, maybe even make you think, or perhaps even be reaffirmed in your own connected feeling towards the industry and dance. Maybe you already got it right. I know I don't have all the answers, but I'm hoping that this will give you something to think about. Thank you so much. Enjoy. Okay. Please welcome Dr. Blessyl Buan, Linette Doherty, Nicole Hamilton, and Shawn Byfield. Thank you so much, guys, for coming today. I am so excited to have this conversation with all of you. We've been using the word pivot, and it's a word that everybody is using right now, but even more in this industry, we have really had to figure out how to maintain some kind of presence. I think that dance, music, art, is so important for not just adults, but for children to have those influences. And now that we are going into a period of time where we're returning back to school, but we're also returning back to our dance schools. So I'm wondering, during this time, do you feel that there are some things that we should actually take the time to maybe reinvent or recreate or rethink in our dance education that will be beneficial to our students today? Nicole.
That's a big question. I think one of the things that I feel like I've been saying for years is we need to rethink about how students are represented within studios. So I'm going to start there because I think with the magnifying of anti-Black racism that we've been seeing in the news, that now is something that people are much more conscious of. So I think studios need to recognize, how are we marketing ourselves? Who is sitting at the decision tables? I think studios need to recognize and be aware of the fact that not every student receives information the same. And also not every student is going to look the same when they're placed into certain outfits, costuming, etc. So I think studios need to really think about, how are we going to ensure that our home, our organization, our company reflects the city that we live in, reflects the world that we live in. So that's one of the things that I think companies, studios, organizations really should be considering. The other thing too is considering and mapping out exactly how are we preparing our students to start the new year. So we know, of course, that COVID-19 is here and we all need to respond to it. We need to make sure that we're putting certain parameters in place for students to be safe. What I mean is going a step further and doing things like screening to ensure that students are even ready at all to begin a school year. What type of stress are they dealing with? What type of injuries could they be possibly dealing with before they even start within that school year? Now, a lot of companies, a lot of schools have started to take on that mandate and really consider screening students before they enter into the school year. It's something that I would love to see every studio do? Really think about screening. Healthy Dancer Canada is one of the great organizations, as some of you know, that is definitely making sure that elements surrounding screening are being enforced or being encouraged at studios. But yeah, I would say, Rhonda, those are the two or three things that I think in particular really studios need to think about.
For sure. The Healthy Dancer Canada, the screening, I think, and I was going to talk to Dr. Blessyl as well about that. Those elements are so key for making sure our dancers that are competing competitively are able to think a little, well, the teachers are able to think a little bit differently on how we train our students. So not looking at everyone in the line and thinking everybody in that line are the same, because they have small little growth spurts, small little issues with maybe a hip or a knee, and then looking at all dancers exactly the same and thinking, I just want your leg at 180 degrees and calling it a day. I feel that we know more information now, or at least we should try to know more information now. So we want to think about that. And then speaking to what you were saying about, and I was going to talk about this later, but I'm glad you brought it up, about Black Lives Matter. What was happening when we're in the middle of a pandemic and that explosion happened. It really is so important that we start to pay attention to those dancers of color in environments and spaces that are not traditionally for dancers of color. So I was going to say to Blessyl, physically, now we're talking about the physics of what would you like to see happen differently between students and teachers as we go into this year?
Right. I think, yeah, the way students train, especially when you look at the competition kids, and there is a spectrum of these competition kids and pre-professional kids. Mm-hmm. So for this purposes, I'm going to say if you're pre-professional or full-time competitive, you're looking at between 20 to 40 hours a week of training. This is pre-COVID. Right, a lot. And this is who I treat. Okay, and the reason why I say I'm giving you that parameter is that there are also competition schools that are only 6 hours a week or 8 hours a week, which as a parent, I think that's a lot already. But anyway, so depending on the dancer's goals, if we're talking about this 20 to 40 hour a week parameter, okay, which sometimes is not always efficient when it comes to technique, because some of those hours are dedicated to technique classes, exam classes, and then competition choreography classes, and then recital choreo. So it's like every school does it differently, okay? Some are more efficient than others, okay? So I think dance educators need to think, okay, you need to taper in the time between classes to sterilize the room. You need to keep the cohort from moving from place to place. You need to keep the cohort in their social distancing boxes. Mm-hmm. Ideally, the dancers should be masked, but the reality is that most studios are not masking the kids. And I think it's because the research is split or not strong enough as far as kids being a carrier of COVID. I see some studios where the teachers are not masked and the teachers must be masked. Mm-hmm. So there's kind of that variation. Now, if we talk about if the dancers are masked, you really have to change the way you train, because we have to talk about intensity of training, what you can fit in a class. And because these kids are kind of starting the season, you know, I do support a few studios where I do the screens, postural screen, especially with a growth spurt. A lot of the kids, then they revert because they can't find their center because they have longer legs. The boys end up having like these muscles that like, what the, you know, and they end up have like Osgood Schlatters or patellar tendonitis, jumpers knee. That's mostly for the boys. Girls with point shoes, and then suddenly they can't balance because they have longer legs, okay? So anyway, with all that to say, I think the top of the season should really about honoring the fact that these kids are out of shape.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be about, okay, we're back in the studio, so we could potentially get back into these comps, or maybe these comps have now delayed and now we'll get back in February. Well, we don't know that, and it's highly unlikely, okay? So we have to kind of treat this as, let's build the artist. Let's build the technique. Let's put recital and comps aside, and let's get back to the fundamental of what dance is bringing joy, telling a story, teaching musicality in a safe way.
Yes.
And let that build, you know, let these kids learn how to embody and vocalize how they feel as they enter under stress in a pandemic. You know, you can't hug your dance friends unless you bubbled with them. You can't hug your dance teacher. You can't, it's a different social dynamic altogether. We have to acknowledge that. We can't be like, oh, suddenly we can pay the rent, get them in as fast as we can and churn them. Like, I know some studios are all about the churn.
I know.
You got to focus on the humanity of dance.
Yes.
And we get an amen.
Please.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
So, and that's what I mean. It's like for the kids, like kids of color, all of that. I think if you allow the child to get the right information, to ease them up with the training and not give them the shock.
Right.
Right. And then also create hybrid models for parents who have lost their job. Don't assume that dance families can afford, like, okay, we're back on track. A lot of dance families cannot afford to put their kids in dance this year or in the same capacity of how they did before. So if they were a 20 to 40 hour a week, there were some dance families that I know they dropped 20 grand for 3 kids for dance. I know, it's like, what the? And it,
try for one.
And for one too.
For one,
oh, yes.
In some places.
That too for some, and yeah, there's a spectrum. Mm-hmm. There's a spectrum, and some people can afford that, but sometimes things are not the same. And I think the problem with dance schools, and I'll just say it now, and I think a lot of parents are forced to go into the competitive stream because they lose on the technique training. If you're a rec and you're a legit good dancer and your parents, that's what they can afford. Mm-hmm. There aren't I would say almost hardly any, only know one studio that will teach rec with technique and no frills. Mm-hmm. The space too.
Let's talk about the space.
So you got the space, and that's the thing. Like, it's
so
what do we do with those parents?
I feel
all the bells and whistles, and suddenly, like, what? Then they're just like in this rec program that is like way too basic. But you know what I mean? Like,
I've had that. Like, I've had parents come to my studio from comp studios where they were either shunted off to the side and not taught anything because, like, oh, you're just a rec kid. Mm-hmm. Or the expectation is that dance is your life. You're here every day after school. And if this is a kid who may need tutoring or may need extra time with homework, you have to pick, you know, or even if it's just a family that we have other kids with other activities, we can't get them here for dance literally every day of the week and be off at competitions every weekend. Like, they can't do that. That's not going to be their family's lifestyle. And what kid is ready to make that decision when they're 9 and they're like, well, I just started dance. Let me see where it goes before I jump into, I'm here at this studio every single day.
So can I just say, just put this out there for you guys, and anyone can answer. Has dance become so elitist that we have lost the sort of true idea that sort of you could just be on or in a class? My parents spent $5. My dance studio was in the basement of somebody's home. Yes, that is where I got my training, in a rectangle the size of my house. And what I see happening, and I used to say, oh, I dance at Dolly Dinkle School of Dance, right? But honestly, that I'm discrediting that experience, because that experience made Rhonda. It set me, because I was able to grow into who I am as a dancer. I didn't have to try to get all these little tricks and all the little faces and do all those things, because She was more interested in, what do you have to bring to the table? I never even thought about that until I started thinking about what I was going to talk to you guys about. This woman with the beehive, she was 65 years old. She made me believe in myself. Even as a Black dancer, she exposed me to Frank Hatchett and Stephen Boyd and all of these older teachers that were from the States that were Black. And she was giving me this information. I didn't even know why until now when I look back and I think, it's because she wanted me to know that I mattered. She saw me. I was the only Black child in my dance class, but she saw me and saw something special. And what my fear is that as all of these bigger studios, and I know there's a lot of big studios that do great work, and I'm not saying that they don't do great work, but they do eat up the little guy. And so I want to say, Linette, your studio is a community studio. Do you have space to put 20 kids in a room? No.
Even without social distancing, I never had classes bigger than 12.
Yeah.
Partly because I have a smaller studio, but also partly because just for me and the way I want to teach, I would rather not have 50 kids in a class. And I'm like, I only really know some of them who end up in the front, and oh yeah, those two who are always in the back, I never really see. Like, I never wanted that for my studio. I always wanted that I know every kid in that class. I know what they're working on. I know what they're struggling with. I get to celebrate when they hit triples because I know how long it's taken them to get there, right? But I think you lose some of that in a huge studio. And I know for me, sometimes it means, like, I generally don't teach on Saturdays. But I make a point of going in, because once I was able to hire somebody else and stop going in every single day to teach, I had that moment where I went, oh, I don't know these kids as well. I don't know their families as well because I'm not there. I don't teach them on Saturdays. So I just found I needed to make a point of going in on Saturdays, even though it meant I got to go in on a Saturday morning when I don't really have to, because I don't teach this class anymore. But I wanted to go in and see those kids, because they're like the young Saturday morning dancers, and eventually as they grow up they're going to be in my class, and I want that same experience where I've seen them grow up and I know who they're coming up into as dancers.
So does anyone, Shawn, do you want to answer that elitist question? Because I'm bringing it up, and maybe isn't the right word, but I do think it describes what happens to kids sometimes, as Blessyl was saying, that cannot afford that big price tag to learn, but boy, oh boy, do they have untapped talent. And because of that lack of income, they don't travel up those ranks. They stay in the same place. And I've seen it happen on my own. I want to know if anybody else has noticed that too. Not all the winners in the competitions are always the best, or the students with the most potential. Shawn, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. There's so much to be said with this, and there's so much value in a small or a community studio. Being able to know every dancer in the room matters. As a child, for me, I grew up also in a small studio dancing on tile.
Yeah.
Oh, but it is what it is. Back in the day, we all old school, right?
We are old school.
Yeah, but we all knew each other because there weren't 45 or 50 of us in a ginormous 3,000 square foot studio. So we could look at each other and know each other by name, but our teachers knew, just like what you were saying, Linette, and what you were saying, Rhonda, every single person by name and what we all had to offer, what our strengths were, what our weaknesses were. I had a wonderful teacher who was white, Heather Menzies, back in the day, who recognized my color. And I didn't even realize this until maybe a decade ago, she went out of her way, brought me to events. She took me to see Gregory Hines live. She took me to watch the movie Tap with Sammy Davis Jr. and Honey Coles and Gregory Hines and all that. She brought in Richard Smith to the studio. She brought in George Randolph to come and teach. And I didn't pick up on that because I'm one of 20 maybe kids, and I'm the only male, and B, I'm the only Black kid.
That was me.
So right away, I just, okay, like nobody looks like me, but I didn't realize how much above and beyond she was doing to help me feel appreciated. So that's one story. But the other thing I wanted to share with these large competitive studios, and like you said, there's many that bring a lot of value and they're doing great work. But I find that if you're not in that top tier as a dancer, your esteem starts to go downhill because you're now in the comparison game. You're now looking, oh, well, Stacy, her parents can afford her to be in the studio 35 hours a week. And my mom, we can only afford to be in here 10. We both love dance, but it's clear that Stacy is getting more attention because parents have the bankroll. So what we're starting to see now is a new generation of schools and competitions and events that are showcasing the bankroll, not the heart.
Yeah, totally.
And so for me, as a judge, I always want to recognize everybody that has the heart. Technique is one thing, that's great, but are you dancing for the right reasons? Or are you just in the studio because Miss So-and-so wants to have a new wall of trophies and she's going to force you into all the positions and train your butt to the point of exhaustion, and you don't even love dancing, but she's got a factory and she has a reputation. So it's all about just the medals and the trophies and the things and the stuff. And what I know, we're all on the same page. We understand the stuff doesn't matter. When you get that trophy, that medal, whatever it is, a month from now, the kids don't remember. They don't. They look at it, oh yeah, I did that competition. What was this again? What was my dance? And and then a year after that, it's in some box.
Yeah.
Or their parents have it in their basement or something like that. You know what I mean? But the kids that grew in a more community-based, I would say more nurturing environment are the ones that appreciate the dance more. They appreciate movement. And I find that they're the ones from, I don't know, you guys can share on this too, just from observation at events, you call them out on a stage and their eyes light up. They've never been recognized in their studio before. And then to have someone like myself or any of you share words of encouragement and inspiration to them, and to see them, like their eyes, like the pride. And I've seen kids cry. I'm like, no, don't cry. Like, this is great, but they're crying because they're proud. It's rewarding for me, and it's sad at the same time, because they should be getting these kudos and acknowledgments all the time. Whether there's one of you in the room or there's 50 of you in the room, they all matter equally. And I find that that balance isn't there. So with this new season coming up, it would be great for studio owners to recognize the value in encouragement and acknowledgement and understanding the uniqueness of every child, every shape, every color, and bringing that out and helping them feel like they matter.
Yes, definitely. I think that a combination of things that I'm going to just bring up that you said, having basically studio-centered environments versus student-centered environments. So the studio-centered environments, I find, are about the branding, about the medals, are about, we have a reputation, look at my flashy jacket. They have all of that stuff going for them, and there's a lot of money supporting that. Student-centered environments are, you'll find that even on the higher end, but where they are focused on developing the student, and there's no particular time frame in which that student needs to be developed. So when you are in a big studio and you've got, like, you always win and you're going to nationals, the idea of the training is very linear. You need to get the leg up, you need to get the turns in, you need to get the back handspring in the aerial. It doesn't matter if it's hurting you, just get it and get it done. If you don't get it, you're going to sit down, you're not going to be in the front, you're going to be in the back. Student-centered environments, I find, are the experience that Shawn had. Can anybody else speak to the importance of student-centered learning and the value of that. Because the only thing I was going to add to Shawn, what you were saying, is those students stay in dance longer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Them, their arc goes like this.
100%.
Go down.
Those studios as well that are student centered, that I believe we all grew up in that environment. Those teachers understood that not all popcorn pops at the same time.
Yes.
Right? So once they know that, and as a dancer, you know that, you're not comparing anymore. You know, okay, I'll get it next week, or I'll get it next month, or whatever, and she'll get it next week or next month. And you have this sense of encouragement all around, and it's so rewarding, you know? Anyway, anyone want to share on that?
Blessyl, you put your hand up there.
Yeah, I think, like, I grew up in a student-centered dance studio. My parents were immigrants. I danced 1 hour a week, and they squeezed in jazz and tap, like on a Saturday. That was it. I think student-centered, and even those who are training, and I see this for today's studios, there's student-centered community, like very, you know, smaller studios, and there's student-centered big, like formidable studios. They produce dance artists. They produce professionals. And for some studios, you could have that one kid that went pro and you're like, what? Like, but it's because the reality is, once you start auditioning, it is the most heartbreaking thing. You are a nothing. Like, it's like, you need to be able to train that child to stand on the stage or the mark or to slate and just believe in themselves. You need to build that light. So that's what student-centered is you're trying to take that light and develop that light, and we're using the medium of dance. Because as artists, you got to push that light way back to the end of the theater, past the camera lens, to the home of the audience, to the heart of the audience. Mm-hmm. That's where we communicate. So student-centered, if you miss that, I feel like, you know, you look at studios too, like all of you have worked professionally. So I think that's the key, to have that taste, to have a taste of it, or to have a taste of that dream, to have a taste of really studying like the classics, the legends, and be like, that's what we need to transfer. Mm-hmm. That's what I see in you, and this is what you need to see when you watch XYZ, right? I think that's the intangible piece, but not all teachers are good teachers. And so as dance parents, we need to be discerning of the culture of the studio that we bring the kids in. And for me, I've moved my kids around quite a few times. My parents are like, why didn't you just stay with one? And I'm like, I didn't know until I went to recital what studio was all about. Yeah. Because everybody used stock photos on their website, and then they, you know, like, you get really tricked until you figure it out, and you're like, oh, here we go, and my kids are crying. I'm like, no, we gotta go again, we gotta go. And so it's like, as a dance mom, how do you know? I think dance studios need to say it right up front on their website. We are student-centered. It's like, I don't know, like, what are the words?
I think the language is missing, for one. So most studios aren't going, I'm studio-centered. Nobody wants to say they're a studio-centered environment. Let's just put it out there. If you're going to tell parents right up the bat, I don't really care about your kid, or I do care about your kid, right? Or I care about your child, but how I care about your child is I want to make them a winner, right? And this is what we do to make winners. Why do you think that parents can be vilified instead of appreciated when they bring information to studios about what they feel is, I don't like saying missing because you don't want to attack, but I see these shows that are made like Dance Moms, and there's a couple of others who literally make parents seem like they are the enemy. So don't listen to them. But I feel like if parents and studio owners were able to have a conversation, a good, fair conversation, that kids wouldn't get burnt out.
Yeah.
That they would see that we don't want to be at the studio for 20, 30, 40 hours. We want family time. Like, these are types of things that I think over COVID that I think a lot of families might discover that, you know what, it was great not being at the studio every single night of the week. So what do you think about that, Nicole?
Wow, you know, I was just having I love this question because I was just having a conversation with some folks at Youth Protection Advocates in Dance, and we were talking about the fact last week how important it is for dancers to have a voice within their studio, but also for parents to have a voice within the studio as well. If we want to ensure that a dance space is student-centered, well, that means that we have to make sure that the voices of the students are amplified. And who are those students going home with? Their parents. So we have to make sure that the parents' voices are amplified as well. I think the reason why parents can sometimes be vilified or considered to be, you know, strong voices that we don't have time to hear is for a couple of different reasons. I think it's on a case-by-case situation. In some cases, it's how the parent presents what they want to see change. So if that presentation to the studio comes across in a way of being angry or aggressive or or there isn't a desire to hear what the studio is saying, of course, the studio at times may not respond in the way that that parent wants to. On the other side of things, I think also the reason why some parents can be vilified is because sometimes studios don't want to hear feedback. They don't. They're just not open to hearing how they can change and make situations better for their students. That can be as possibly pride or simply because they're coming, well, actually, let me leave it there. It could sometimes be pride. I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
I think what's really important is that studios have to recognize that the voices of the parents and the students matter. It is so essential to hear what parents have to say. Because that parent is going home with their child, they may be cognizant of information that the studio does not have. They're cognizant of some of the issues, realities that that student might be dealing with at home that that student won't share within a studio space. So studios have to be open to feedback. So yes, for sure, I've seen it happen in many different studios that I've taught in and studios that I haven't taught in, that parents can be vilified. And a lot of times it's very unfair. It's extremely unfair because those parents are simply coming with helpful feedback that can assist in creating a very safe place for that student to be able to facilitate their work.
Oh, for sure. And because you're a studio owner, Linette, I want to get your feedback on this. I know from personal experience what it feels like to not go with the studio culture and to call out some things that I felt were very sort of disappointing. And is when that parent does say something and it goes against that culture of the studio, that studio culture, that then the parents that were saying, oh, yes, before, yes, we totally agree. This is not what I was expecting. They're so concerned about their kids still being in numbers and still being in the front and still doing all of these things and being top 5, my child's top 5, that they forget about what's more important.
I think as a studio owner, I welcome parents. Like, I want parents to give me that feedback. I don't live with your child. I see them, some of them, they come in for an hour a week. The rest of that week, they're not with me. And as close a relationship as I feel that I can develop with some kids as their dance teacher, it is not the relationship that you have with your parents who live with you, who raise you, right? They have a lot more information into what's going on in that child's life. I found sometimes that parents don't want to give that information, and it may sometimes come from, as you're saying, maybe it's not received well or it hasn't been received well in the past. I remember having a child once in a musical theater class So where typically I would, give them scripts and they get music, and we spend some time talking through it a little bit before they go home with their scripts. But typically the older those children are, the more that the expectation would be at that age that they can already read. And I had a child who would have been 11 at the time. And as we first kind of went through our first read through, your first thought is, oh, maybe they got lost where they were. Or then it's like, maybe you're just kind of zoning out and you're not paying attention to what we're doing as we're following through the script. And then eventually I kind of went, this child can't read. And I never would have done a let's sit down table read through the script, especially with kids at that age, because I would not have wanted that kid to have felt singled out like that every time we got to your line, you needed me to kind of spoon feed it to you, because that child just couldn't read. And I wish I had had that information in advance, but I recognize that for some parents, maybe you've tried to share something about your child and it's either been dismissed or like, yeah, I got a lot of kids. I can't take yours on as an individual. This is the thing that we're doing and everyone's got to fit into this. But I found for me, what was really helpful is I added a couple of lines to my registration form. I ask about, any previous injuries. I ask about allergies, and I have a line that I added that just said, is there anything else we should know? And tried to leave it as open-ended as possible to say, some parents add, she's really shy. That's great for me to know when your kid first comes into the studio, if they're coming in as a first-time student. Some parents add silly things, I'll get like, she really likes to laugh. We have a dog named Pickles, or whatever it is that you want to say. But that's great. You come in for the first time and I already have a little bit of information about you. Some people just say nothing, and that's fine too. But I found for me, the more information I can have, if I get a chance to have a conversation with a new parent and I know, my kid is a little bit, they kind of hold back. They want to see what's going on first. Like they will eventually participate, but they really don't want to be pushed. That's so helpful to know. Whereas other kids, maybe it's, no, they really need that cheerleader. They're like, come on, let's do it. Let's try it. Like everybody does learn in a different way because we're all different as human beings. And if I know something about the way your child learns, I can help them learn in a way that is best for them, because that's ultimately why they're there, right? You want your child, it's not babysitting. I'm not interested in just running a really expensive babysitting service for kids, right? Because you can hire a teenager to babysit your kids for a lot less than you can pay for dance classes. So if they're going to come into the studio, my hope is that they are going to learn something. They're going to develop something. And then it's not necessarily dance, right? I think I've learned a lot more about myself and how I am as a human being and how I respond to challenges in life over time. But all kinds of things that you learn, these lessons, these life lessons out of dance and how you approach training. And all of that is so important. And it's less important than whether or not this kid is actually going to be a dancer. Like they might go on to be an accountant.
Well, yes, Nicole, you were going to say.
Yeah, I love this conversation. Thank you for sharing that, Linette. And thank you, Rhonda, because I just wanted to add, when I think about this, one of the things that I think I've seen a lot is, actually, let me back up and say, regardless of how a parent presents, sometimes parents will present angry because they're frustrated. They're frustrated with what is happening with their child. And I think regardless of how a parent presents, it is still, the onus is still upon the studio to listen to what that parent has to say. Because you never know what is going on behind the scenes. You never know what's going on. It is still, the onus is upon that studio to sit and listen. If for any reason the studio feels unsafe in the moment, because that parent is brandishing a weapon, then maybe I can understand if that studio decides in that moment, okay, we can't have this conversation. But it's so important for that studio to say, listen, I'm going to communicate with you. I hear what you're saying. I understand, validate what that parent has to say. Communication above all things, if both parties can just communicate, it's amazing the shift, the pivot, the change that can possibly happen to make both sides happy And I think in a lot of cases, not all, because there are some great studios out there. I think in a lot of cases, though, unfortunately, some studio owners don't want to be wrong. They
No.
don't want to be wrong. And as a result, whatever it is that that parent is going to share is going to come across as an offense, rather than, oh, this is something that we can possibly do to shift our space to make it safer for students. So that's why I was loving, listening to Linette and hearing your share with regards to that, because it's so key. All we have to do is just simply communicate and listen and take it from there.
And
Yeah.
I think that a lot of times the way that, if parents have feedback for me, I mean, it's partly that it is my studio and I am a smaller studio. So if they have a question about some policy that they don't see the value in, I made it up. So I know why it's there, right? Like, I'm happy to say this is why this is done like this. And I found, for me, if I can give them that background on why things happen a certain way, it's been, oh, okay, yeah, I get that. I still don't love it, but I understand why that policy is in place. But I know I've had it the other way. I've had a parent who at one point I might have called like a difficult parent because she challenged me on things. She pushed me on things. Stuff that she didn't like, she would say it. And we didn't always agree. And sometimes it was, I'm sorry that you don't like this, but this is why it has to be this way. But there are other things that I changed because I thought about why she said that. And I thought, I can't know how my studio is perceived by other people unless they tell me, like, I think this policy makes sense the way I've worded it, but people are interpreting it differently. So I need to rethink how I'm communicating it to other people. She went from being like, a difficult parent or whatever. I mean, I taught 3 of her kids, like they kept coming back because we were able to talk through things. Like, I think she felt heard and listened to, and when it was, absolutely, that's valid, and I think that should change, it did. But I was also able to give her reasons sometimes for the things that couldn't change or couldn't be exactly what you wanted. Every parent can't come in and pick your own costume, that can't happen. But, there are certain things that I think we can listen to parents and say, if this is what they're saying their child needs, we need to take that into account, because otherwise that child is going to suffer.
Yes. I'm just going to lead this conversation a little bit more towards competitions, because that's mainly where some of the discussions happen, where parents and studios don't see eye to eye. I think there are some things that competition can get right. I feel competitions are educational. I think that it can show you where you are compared to other students your age. I think it can give you an opportunity to perform, to get better at a skill. What other things that you feel competition is good for? I see you bobbing your head, Shawnee.
How much time do we have for this Zoom? Really? Let me backtrack to when I was younger, and I'll tie it in. When I was younger, we didn't compete that much at my studio. We were a performance-based school. We would do all the community events. This is in Mississauga, so we'd hit up Carasaga. We were performing at Square One. My mom worked in a nursing home, so we would perform at the nursing home every other week. So we just got that out. And we went to competition for a learning experience. We didn't go to competition with the mindset of we're going to go and clean up and get all the trophies and everything. Of course, there's the challenge of wanting to win, right? Goal setting is important, but we would go and compete, but our teacher would make us stay and watch everybody and to take mental notes and say, okay, like, who are the dances that stood out for you? Because that was our motivation to go back to the studio and say, wow, remember that dance? They did the kick and then they did the lift thing. Could we do that? What do we need to do? And then we would have that discussion and start working on our skills to get us to be able to do that the following year. That was my competition experience. And we did maybe one a year, maybe 2. That was, when Peel, it was the Peel dance competition, and we did Brantford and all these other like small, Kiwanis maybe, when they just started. So that was the whole competitive experience that I now carry forward. And competition should be a learning tool for all of the participants, for the studios, and for the parents. So we have a bunch of different groups. That's why I was saying, how much time do we have to
Well,
talk about this? So I'll talk about the parents first. Parents right now are seeing all these things on TV. They're sucked into the world of dance world. They're all about the so you think you can dance and all that. And so now they have a misconstrued maybe perception of what dance competition should be like. It should be ruthless. You got to be elite. You got to be at the top of your game. You got to, no holds barred, almost to the point of being unnecessarily aggressive. And I'm all for having a competitive spirit, just like hockey, just like soccer, just like basketball. You're a team. But as a parent, if you don't understand, there's so much more than just winning the things and just going there solely to compete, then you're missing the point. And what happens, I've noticed as a parent, I'm not a parent, but from watching other parents, you start to live vicariously through your kids. Your desire to win now trickles down into your child's psyche. They just want to dance.
Yeah.
But you want to win. So really, who's going to competition? Are you sending your kids to competition, or are you and the other dance moms going to competition? That's what it's been about. Yeah. And it's mind-blowing. Like Blessyl, like I know it's weird, but I'm a judge. We see it. I'll go in the hallways and you see the 5, 6, moms, they've got their coolers of, there's wine in their glass or whatever, which is fine. But they are there to win. And when their entry comes, they are like first people in, and they're at the back and they're cheering and come on, let's go and do it. And it's like, whoa, like what is happening right now? What happened to the, oh my gosh, like you did it. Yay, my daughter, did you see that? This is great. Look at your smile now. You're so happy. Like it's a different energy from the parents, I find. Now, not all competitions are like that. Not all parents are like that. Obviously, we know this. But it's interesting to see the ones that have a different reason for being at competition. They are the ones I find are competing. They're the ones that are saying, okay, before the year is over, what competitions are we going to next year? Because this big box studio is going there and this big box studio is going there. And we know we can beat this one. So we want to go here. And you know what I mean? Like they're strategizing their competitive tour instead of asking their children, hey, do you even want to do this? Do you even want to compete? Because I guarantee you 8 out of 10 of them will say no. They just want to be with their friends. They want to be social. It's a team, right? Especially the teens. It's very like, okay, this is like my dance family, but that's also their outlet. They share things. They're open with their peers. And they couldn't care less, many of them, if they're winning a trophy or medal. They just want to have the experience, that shared experience together. And so I really wish parents were watching this recording right now, because they could probably learn a lot from everything that we all have, in our experience. But anyway, so that's one element of the parent side. Then there's obviously the kids, the ones who are on stage, and you can see them. We can all see them. I know you all personally, and I know you can look in the eyes of a dancer and they don't want to be there. Or their heart is crushed, or they're intimidated, they're insecure for whatever reasons. Many times it has to do with what's going on at home and their parents. Other times it has to do with the teachers that are like, okay, I don't want to see you unless you come off the stage dancing perfectly. And it breaks. This is what crushes me. So there's some events that I'm the MC for on stage, and it breaks my heart when I'm backstage announcing numbers and I hear and see the teachers that are still drilling their kids literally 30 seconds before they go on stage. And I see their shoulders and they're concave and their heart isn't in it, and they're just doing it because teacher wants to win something. And then of course they get on stage. What happens? They don't dance the best. And they go off stage and they're in tears because their teacher walked out. How can you call yourself an encourager when all you're doing is harping on this child? They get on stage and, you know, they had a little mix up or something, they forgot, they tripped, whatever happens, and you're not there to encourage them to say, hey, you know what? You did your best. I'm proud of you. Like, that's what, so I've had moments, and I don't even know these kids sometimes, but they know me because I've seen them grow year after year, and I'm always sharing anything that I can with them. I've had moments when they've come crying to me, and I'm embracing them while I'm announcing another thing, and people don't see the side. And I wish I had my own camera crew sometimes to capture these moments. And I feel like if I could just have 5 minutes with that teacher to help them understand they're doing more damage than good, then maybe something will click. Does anyone else experience that?
I was going to just say to you, it's either that what about the child who doesn't even have the teacher go with them to stage because they're not in the top 5 or they're not in their top tier. They've just been given something because they don't want those parents to not think they're not going to get something. So they don't even send the teacher that teaches that child. That child doesn't get the choreography or the instruction of the best teacher. They get the sub or whatever. So then that child already knows. Kids aren't dumb. This is the thing. They know what's going on. They see with their own eyes what's going on. And that's the painful stuff that really gets me. And it's hard for me because I'm a mother of a child who dances, but I'm also a dancer. I was a professional dancer. So when I talk to teachers or I talk to somebody about these things, and I adjudicate competitions, so I'm seeing it from all angles. And I know I'm a much better adjudicator now that I have a child of my own, because I really am able to think about, okay, when I say this to this child, I kind of know how they're going to feel if they hear it. So how I say it really, really matters. But when I watch other children not having that experience, and like you, Shawn, I can see things happening, teachers yelling at kids off the side, parents getting into arguments with other parents. I've been cornered myself in a bathroom as an adjudicator, asking me why I didn't give somebody a mark that they thought they should have gotten. And I just kind of said, you know, I'm sure your daughter is amazing, but I only see them for 3 minutes. And in this 3 minutes, it just wasn't their day. Doesn't mean they're not going to be somebody special, but in that 3 minutes, just wasn't their day. But I appreciate that they danced for me. You know what I'm really trying to, but the thing is, this is what parents don't understand. It's not hockey. It's not hockey. It's not baseball. When you go to watch the ballet at the National Ballet of Canada, or you go see Alvin Ailey, when they're in the middle of a turn section, you don't go, get it, girl, shake. You know, that's not, that is not what happens. And when you are in an audience and you're trying to appreciate what somebody is actually doing, and then you hear a dad in the corner going, shake it, girl. First of all, you're like, ooh, because that's your kid and she's 5, right? So I think the perspective of what we feel is a good thing at these competitions, in actuality, is something that I have a real issue with. Because I love when a kid is being a kid. I don't want to see a 6-year-old in thigh highs and booty shorts. Can we just talk about costumes for a second?
Oh my gosh, yes. Can I just start with that then? and being a male and not a dad, I find many times I'm the first person to share comments as a judge. You know, I'll make a note because whenever I'm judging, I speak to the dancer. I'm speaking to them. Many times they don't have control over what their teachers put them in.
Yeah.
However, I'm uncomfortable. Like I want kids to be kids. So it makes 0 sense to me to have your 6-year-old in a little crop top and, you know, little high booty shorts and whatever, and being all super sensual. Why? They're 6. It makes 0 sense to me. And guess what? When your daughter grows up in their teens, they're going to be doing that anyway. So you might as well keep them a kid for as long as you can. And that's just me. And so I find that I'm usually the first person to say, you know what, you may want to consider a different costume because of her age. And you don't want people to get the wrong impression. And more importantly, you don't want her to start feeling a certain way about herself. Kids compare, whether we try to keep them away from it or not. They are now looking at each other. They are now judging each other's bodies and their physique and everything. And this is a whole other conversation, but they start to imitate what they see on TV, obviously. So I mentioned the whole world of dance thing, and we're seeing these, like, why are you in lace and you're 7? I don't understand, So I know you all have a similar sentiment to all of this too, but I just want to share from a male perspective without having kids. I would not want my daughter to be dressed a certain way on stage. I just wouldn't, and knowing that kids nowadays are so critical of themselves and esteem matters, why am I going to set them up to be judging themselves and to be judging each other? It makes no sense. That's not how it was when I was growing up. We were fully clothed. In fact, when I was 7, I was, this is the 80s. So I was the one wearing the crop top, so you could see, because I was like, days of breakdancing and Beat Street. So it was great. And I loved it. And I was like, that was my choice. I went with my mom to Byway and we found my clothes and I picked them out. And but it wasn't my family saying, you're going to wear this. It wasn't my teachers saying, you're going to wear that. Costumes were healthy, and we actually had a degree of choice back then with your costumes. Nowadays, we're seeing it's a completely different situation where, okay, here's your costume. Listen, if my daughter's costume can fit in the palm of my hand, you're missing some of it.
And still be $500.
Yeah, the costume thing, I have noticed over the years, my studio's been in business 15 years now. So I have seen the costume catalogs and the changes in what they are offering. And I used to really notice a difference between what I would get from American costume catalogs and then what the Canadian companies were offering. And I don't see that anymore. Everybody is offering crop tops and tiny little things. And even the pictures, the little 3-year-olds are false eyelashes and these poses and like little French maid skirts and all this stuff. It's disturbing. Some of it is really disturbing. Yeah. And I will say, I have said to costume companies, because some of them will say, oh, we can do what you want. And I'm like, can you give it a shirt? I love this costume, but does it come with a shirt?
Yeah.
This is a bra. I want it to come with a shirt.
Yeah. I'm going to get to you, Shawn, but I just wanted to add, I remember adjudicating at a competition, 6-year-olds dancing to Car Wash. I always tell this story, but it was amazing. They were in their jumpsuits, the car wash, and dancing, do-do-do-do-do. And it was the old school version. So it was like 70s, do-do-do-do. And then it went, do-do-do-do. And the Christina Aguilera version came on. And those little girls bent over, pulled the jumpsuit off, and flipped it up through their jumpsuits, and they were wearing bikinis underneath, which they then had these little cars, and it was like work, and they were like putting suds on the car. And immediately for me, I was like, I loved it until that moment. We have to be really careful the messaging that we're sending our young girls. We really, really do. And I have a young girl, so I'm just going to say that is not what I want her to think that she's supposed to do to get any kind of attention whatsoever. And this is where I have a battle between saying, ooh, that looks sharp, on some lovely young women wearing the crop top. They have beautiful physique. It looks lovely. But I don't want to see bras on preteens or teens. We're just starting to develop, and they are already feeling self-conscious, and then you have them doing a tap number. And because they have a jacket, the jacket is open. They're wearing this probably regular La Senza or La Vie en Rose bras. And I know they can't be feeling that confident when you're just, you're developed, but you're just starting to kind of get used to that new part of your body. We have to think more about the messaging that we're sending our girls. And even for boys now, I think it's a big thing now where boys are going without shirts and they're on stage. Not all boys feel good about everything or don't want to be exposing themselves that way. And they feel the pressure of trying to be older before their time. And I think that has a lot to do with what's happening. I understand things have to evolve with dance, but I feel that in that evolving, we are missing some really dear moments for children's dance, like dear sweet moments. Yes, Blessyl.
And I think what we're talking about is that there is a market for this type of pageantry dance. There is definitely a market. And, because all of us have danced and we can speak as an educator, as an adjudicator, all of this stuff, which is like, I think a really hard parent to please for any studio. So for the group that's like us, where we're like, keep the kids innocent and let's just develop the child, the parents have to find that studio. You can't change that studio's mind. If that parent and teacher, you come together and you just agree to disagree, you have to move on. And I think studios need to recognize, like, this is how we do it. You might want to consider this studio and not be so hoarding about the numbers, but be like, we are not in alignment, and that's okay. And don't make it about like superiority or this and that. It's just a different product. It's a different experience. And with dance competitions, I feel like there are pageantry competitions, and then there's some studios that are really serious about performance. They don't submit their kids there. But as a parent, you're like, competition's competition.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that?
They're different competitions.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of working at a few really lovely competitions where I feel like they get it. Right. And then when I first started out, I went to some of these really big competitions where honestly, it was like the CNE. It was like, you got your cotton candy and your hot dogs and your bling, and, we might as well have like a casino in the back for the parents. And like, it's a show. It's not even really about the kids on stage because there's so much noise going on in the audience. I don't even think anybody's watching what's happening on stage. I feel there's a lot more pageantry in some areas that more than others. I think I've been to a few out west, and I was like, wow, this is very different than what I've experienced in Ontario. I'm just going to say. They're respectful. They curtsy when you give them an award. It's just a very different exchange and an experience. And I'm just wondering, over this time, can we adapt some of these things and maybe think about adding it to what we're doing? Nicole, you were going to say.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible to adapt some of these things. That's a great question. It is the answer, I think, is, do competitions want to adapt to do those things? Right? I remember I started as a competitive dancer very young, and I remember if ever I didn't feel comfortable in a costume, I love the fact that our teacher would adapt for us. So if some of us were more developed than others, our costumes were altered to make sure that we felt comfortable in them. I watch now as many costume choices are so alarming when I sit back now, and even when I enter into that judging space and I'm seeing kids coming on stage in certain things, I think to myself, okay, are we considering here just how sexualized our children now are becoming because of the costumes that are being chosen for them? So I think competitions need to recognize, or to really consider, what is the intention and purpose behind putting our students in these costumes? Is it because this costume is trending? Is it because it's cool? Is it because it's flashy and we think the judges are going to like them? Or is it because simply I just like the costume and I think it's a great color. What is the intention and purpose behind putting that child in that costume? And is that costume age appropriate? Those are, and there's information that's out there for competitions. There's information that's available to them to be able to determine if they don't know the answers to those questions, to be able to support them in that plane. So I get very nervous as a judge when I see kids coming on stage that are in costumes that they really should not be. Because that 5-year-old, if that 5-year-old is dressed in a manner that is screaming that they are 40, that's alarming. What are we saying? How are we using these bodies on stage? And are we also considering the fact that these are human beings that are going to develop into older human beings? We have to consider the safety of their mindset as well, right? What is happening? What are we teaching them? What are we training them to think about their own bodies? Because as young children, they also need to have their understanding of their own sexual beings as an individual is also beginning to develop. So what are we throwing at them that they are not ready for? So that's what I think about as well. Like that is so alarming. When I first opened up my dance company, one of the things that was asked of me was, are you competitive? Are you going to be putting, my child into competition right away? And my response was no, because I want to be able to make sure that any student, any child that's going into any competition is ready for it, that they understand what competition is about, and also prepare them for what they could be entering into. Because at times, as we all know, competitions can sometimes be unhealthy spaces, some of them, because of the individuals that may be within those spaces. So I think it's important for everybody, again, I'm going to come back to that word communicate, for everybody to communicate, to understand, and to ensure that above all else that the child is safe.
Yes. So as we're going into this new year, what are a couple things that parents can look for to know that your child is getting burnt out? Are we starting to use children as pawns for branding of our own spaces? So when we own a space, we want to look good. So therefore, these are the people that are going to help make us look good, rather than developing an entire group of kids. Yes,
Can I
Shawn.
share?
Yeah.
So to your first question, what parents should be looking for, I think one of the most important things parents should be doing is paying attention to their children's responses to dance. For example, if your child loves dance, what do they talk about all the time? Dance, 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 dance. I can't wait until dance. I'm looking forward to dance. Help me with my dance bag. Can we go shopping for dance? They just are excited about that. Once you start to notice, though, you pick them up after school to bring them to dance, and they're walking slowly to the car, or they're not super excited about it. Are you looking forward to class? Yeah, kinda. Their attitudes will will inform a parent on what's going on inside. Maybe something has shifted, but I find parents aren't really paying attention. They're just, okay, got to get this child to that venue, and then and they're not really checking in with their kids. And I get to see the kids, like I mentioned before, that love it, and then the other kids that don't. And I'm not a parent, and if I can pick that up in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, how long have they been feeling this way before they get to the stage? You know what I mean? So I think responsible parenting is saying, all right, I'm going to check in with my Susie. How you feeling about dance right now? And start asking some questions and have them share, and let them know it's okay to share however they're feeling. Because I find a lot of times too, kids don't have that opportunity to have these conversations. So when the opportunity presents itself, they hold it in, because they've never been given this chance to talk about it before. They can't talk about it at the studio. They can't talk about it at school. So now my dad wants me to talk about it. I'm awkward. So if we let them know gradually that it's okay If you're loving dance, that's awesome. If you're not, that's awesome too. Maybe there's another activity that you're really passionate about, and you might discover, you know what, dad or mom, this dance thing, it was cool until I was 9 or 10. But this past year, I found an interest in swimming. You know, I really want to do that. I've been inspired. I was watching the swim team and this and that, and I'd really like to do that. Okay, you know what? Well, let's finish our commitments, because that's another thing that could be another conversation about commitments. You said you're going to, you know, be a part of the team for the year. So it's important that you maintain that commitment to the best of your ability and you don't let your team down, right? Unless obviously there's some sort of, you know, injuries, or they're really like their energy is totally, you know, they're on a spiral, then you have to be smart about pulling them out. But it's important. Dance teaches us all about, you know, dedication and teamwork and commitment. And sometimes you don't like it. But guess what? When you're an adult, you're not going to like your job either. So it's important that you develop these skills now. And like Nicole mentioned, it's important that you communicate. And as parents, we encourage our kids to communicate what's happening in their minds, what's happening in their hearts, so that we can now, as a parent, communicate with the studio and say, hey, you know what? My daughter, she loved dance. She's told me she's loved it up until this point, but right now she's really not. So that's why we've pulled her from the comp team. That's why, because I know probably Linette, as a studio owner, you probably think, you know, so-and-so was in all these classes and all of a sudden they're only taking one. What happened? Nobody's told me anything, right?
Those questions are so important, right? And I know sometimes what happened is your kid got good and dance got harder because now they're in a more challenging level. And now suddenly you're being asked to work in a way that you haven't before, right? Like for some kids, if you started out and it's like, this just all came really easily to me. I love dance. It's great. I'm real good at it. And I didn't have to actually work that hard. Like you just had facilities or abilities to do things you didn't really have to push yourself for. But at a certain point, you're going to get better and better. The work gets more and more challenging. Dance is hard on your body, right? We all know that. Like you are sore. It's going to like, it takes something out of you physically. And for some kids, because I've seen that, they're like, great, like super gung-ho. And then it's like, oh, I don't know that I love this anymore. Now I have to really work at it. And sometimes that's okay to say, if you don't like, I used to want to play guitar when I was probably about 13. You know that Bryan Adams song? I like played it till my fingers bled. And I'm like, I did not have that in me to play a guitar until I developed calluses on my fingers. I was like, I don't want to play guitar that badly. So I can't play the guitar to this day. I never wanted to go through that. And I had friends say, that's ridiculous. You did point work. And I'm like, yes, but I did want to go through that, right? Like, and so for some kids, maybe dance isn't something that you want to push yourself that hard into. When what I've always said is, great, if you want to, like, I'm going to come to class once a week, my friends are here, I have a good time. I don't actually care if I get that good at it, but I just enjoy doing it. I think there needs to be a place for those kids at studios, right? That you're not going to be the kid who's going to be a professional dancer, but you're going to come and you're going to have a good time, and you're still a valued part of the studio. Like, we love having you around and you have a good time and we all have fun in class together. Sometimes, and I've had those conversations with parents too, where it's been, yeah, things are getting harder. Here are some things that we can do to help get through this next stage. And as you say, that like stick out your commitment for the year, where you say, can we keep going to here? And by the end of the year, if you still like, this is still too hard, I don't want to keep fighting it. But for some kids, you're like, it's hardest right before a breakthrough. And I just want to encourage you to stick with it, to get that next breakthrough, because then you're going to fall in love with it all over again.
Yeah.
But I think, Nicole, what you were saying about that communication between parents and the dancers and the studio owners and teachers, if that doesn't happen, we never know why that kid is struggling. They just, I don't like it anymore. And if they're not the type of kid who will come right out and tell you, and a lot of kids aren't, then that's all the information we have. This kid just kind of stopped dancing and no one really knows why, and no one, maybe they're stopping an activity that they did really love and they just needed some more encouragement with. But if we don't communicate with them, we don't know that, and you can't help them.
Blessyl, you were going to say?
Yeah, I think when we talk about when you ramp up training and then you see an attitude shift, If you want to ramp up training, you have to have a referral system to a healthcare provider that can help them through injuries. Kids don't identify with the term burnout, and they won't even say, Mom, Dad, I'm burnt out. It is not part of the vocabulary. They won't even know that they're tired. They just show up cranky.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, you have to be cognizant too of the after school schedule. If they're supposed to dance from 5 to 9, where is dinner? They're eating it in the car.
Mm-hmm.
How are they fueling themselves? And then they're also really strong academically, or there's all that pressure. In my clinic, I treat dancers that want to take it all that way, or maybe not. They're just kind of strung along.
They're strung along.
Strung along. And there's some kids that are pre-professional and they're on that track and they love it. And the reality is, when you have these hours, you get repetitive strain and you get burnout. And if you don't have consistent sprung floors, you're going to get the result of, you were tapping on tiles. I was tapping on a church basement floor. Okay, I have arthritis in my spine. Like, this is what happens. There is no escape. So now with dance training being what it is, and you see this in sports too, there's no what you call periodization, which you see in sports.
Right.
Dance has this thing where you're going to cram right to the backstage, all the rehearsals, cram until the event. Whereas in sports, there are rest days because the body needs recovery to go full out.
Yep.
Dance, for some reason, does not have the culture to understand that the kid, and now we're even talking about kids, professional sports,
Yes.
they need rest days. Marathon runners will not run a marathon the day before the marathon. They carb load, they do all the things. They know the whole training schedule is there. So if you're teaching your choreo from September, there's no excuse.
Right.
So you don't even have to start in September. But you can teach the kids to be quick and learn it in 2 weeks, if you wanted to. But what I'm saying is, for me, my role is to support these kids who are on that track by making sure that their alignment and their muscles are lengthened so they continue to have the facility. But even then, there's some kids who are lucky enough to be in my schedule weekly, which is not an accessible thing.
Yes.
You will still see these kids, some kids that are just have these injuries that don't make sense.
Yes.
I always say to the kid when the parent's not in the room, are you having a good time? Are you excited? Are you enjoying yourself? Do you really want to do this? They can't give me an answer. And usually they have a parent that's like a helicopter parent that's really intense and right up into my face, and they really want it. And like we were talking about earlier, it's is the kid competing or going on this track, or is it more parents the gap that the child now has to fill? And that's the thing is, if you can, as a dance studio, it's undeniable. This is just one of those child things. As a parent, you have to be mindful of not putting that pressure on the child. But with mindfulness takes a certain type of consciousness, which, it's not common. It is not common. So studio owners and dance educators will refer that child to me or anybody around in their area. It gives a source of objectiveness outside of the studio to say, this child needs a break. This child's not ready for this. And sometimes parents will take the kid out of that studio because of what I've said, because they're not in alignment.
Yes.
They're not in alignment. That stress fracture that happened that didn't make sense.
Yeah.
They don't have their period and they're 16. They just don't care what I have to say. This is extreme. It exists. And sometimes studios don't want to hear from me that child cannot do point at 9 years old.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So this is what I'm saying is this is what I see. And these are the extremes. But dance parents don't necessarily know that they could see a physio, massage therapist, or a chiropractor, or what have athletic therapists. But those people you pick must be knowledgeable in dance. because it's not like sports. You have to talk about the whole psyche and the artistry and all understanding the stress and the culture of that studio and this and that.
So,
right?
So much of what you're saying, this is so valuable, what you're saying, because Blessyl, you're treating dancers and you're saying, hey guys, it's too much. You were talking about the world of dance, and so you think you can dance. One of the things that those shows did was they really brought dance into the limelight in a way that it had never been before, which then studios started to get lots of business, and that's fabulous. But at the same time, people forget you're on TV because you are extraordinary. These are extraordinary individuals doing extraordinary things for our pleasure, for our viewing pleasure. So it has to be up here. Regular dance students do not need to be up here, especially not at 9 years old. It is not, I find what's happening now is that the students between the ages of 9 and 12 are the highlights of a comp instead of the students between 13 and 18. What's happening to those kids between 13 and 18 is they have become so beat up. Half of them leave because they're not interested in dancing anymore, and they're super fabulous, like amazing dancers, but they just don't want to do it anymore. Not because just their bodies give up, but their hearts give up. Being in COVID and having this time to kind of rethink, I'm wondering if anybody took a moment, like for you, Linette, you took a moment and go like, how can I redo things so that I have healthier students, better relationships with my parents, and a more efficient way of training, like Blessyl is saying, right? So thinking about if we're going to treat our dancers like athletes, which essentially is what's happening now, how can we improve their rise to the occasion, so to speak?
Yes, because even, for example, a lot of these repetitive strain injuries like hip flexor issues, ankles that, you know, for example, with Shawn with tap, like if a child is under stress, we pitch our weight to the front of the body. So we grip our balance with our big toe. And what that does is it grips our ankles. So as a tap dancer, you're not going to be able to articulate. You're not going to be able to get that syncopation. You're not going to get that crisp sound. For dancers, you're not going to get that line, the ballet dancers, the jazz, the contemporary, whatever it is. So a lot of repetitive injuries is also the embodiment of stress. And when you're stressed, you're shallow breathing. And when you're shallow breathing, you lose facility because now you've gripped your neck, which is your ability to turn. You have gripped your jaw, again, with your ability to breathe. Diaphragm stays shallow. And then that's another issue too with keeping the abs engaged because they don't want that kind of thing. So it's like that profile and then the breath control, blah, blah, blah. And then the feet. So it's important for manual therapy or even just touch connection and understanding breath. Because those are the artists that they just stand there on stage before the music starts and you are captivated. When you talk about Alvin Ailey, I'm crying before they even started.
Yeah.
Because they're just like, you know, when Michael Jackson would just come out and he's just breathing.
Yeah.
Right? With the wind, with the fan going on, you're like, good enough, you know, like. So that's what I mean is that kids aren't taught to breathe because they're so locked up trying to keep up with Batman, and wing, single wing, and like all these things, drills, and like going from class to class, from 4 to 9 to whatever class it is, and they haven't eaten, and they maybe take like one sip of water in their water bottle the whole day, and they're just basically running on adrenaline. And then they go home and do their homework at 11 o'clock at night. And start the day again.
And for whatever reason, parents think that this is a normal rite of passage to becoming a professional dancer.
Or they think it's a sign of raising excellent children because these kids become potentially doctors or whatever it is. And for me, I know I've done the whole thing of the whole perfectionist and running on that treadmill. Yeah. And I'm now learning like, oh my God, I was brainwashed into thinking that was excellence. That's not excellence.
Yeah.
And
You know,
yeah.
what's interesting about all of this is we came from a time when, talking about breathing, we learned how to breathe. It was just a conversation we had at my studio, and it was enforced in our discipline. We would breathe through our dance. As I've gotten older and going into different schools and teaching, I noticed that this happens. They're all holding their breath when things get hard. And forced in our discipline, we would breathe through our dance. As I've gotten older and going into different schools and teaching, I noticed that this happens. They're all holding their breath when things get hard. And so I'm constantly trying to pull that out of them. Why are you holding your breath? How does that make sense to you? And I've had these conversations where they don't understand, like you're breathing so shallow. They are, like Blessyl said, they're such shallow breathers right now. And I said, no, like the way your breath should work, your lungs expand, your diaphragm moves down. So why is your chest going forward like this? You should be able to fill your stomach and your abdomen and breathing differently, and you get more energy when you breathe and you do this and everything, and your balance improves it. So I don't understand at what point things switched. Who or what happened that made everyone say, hold your breath, take on that stress internally, and don't exhale? Has anyone else experienced that?
It's the aesthetic. It's the aesthetic of the style of the dance.
Yeah. Nicole, you were going to say?
This conversation is blowing my mind right now. Like I'm wanting to fall off my chair, because I'm just thinking about how much is lost when communication doesn't happen. And I feel like that's been the trending word for me today.
Communication.
Yeah, just the communication. In my, Blessyl and I'm nodding especially to what I'm hearing a lot of what Blessyl is also saying. Blessyl and I have worked together in different capacities. And in my work as a counselor, Blessyl and I have also done some work with Dr. Bonnie Robson at George Brown College. And I've watched Blessyl work and seeing just the added benefit of having someone like Blessyl in your team is so key.
It's a blessing.
So, I'm sorry, it's a blessing. It's a blessing.
Blessyl.
It's a blessing. It's a blessing to have a Blessyl.
Yes.
But what I think about if the question here is, what do students need in order to have a successful and healthy dance career? Have a team.
Yeah.
And when I was much younger, that team really was my dance teacher and my parents. With age came wisdom, because that team started to grow. And as a dance artist, I realized, okay, I need to have more than just my dance teacher and my parent. I need to make sure that I have a chiropractor on that team. I need to have a counselor on that team. I need to have A, B, C, D, and E on that team. Dancers need to have a team. One of the things that I've realized when I've counseled students over the years is I think, for me in particular, one of or two of the most common things that I've dealt with when it comes to mental health in dancers is suicidal ideation and stress.
Mm-hmm.
And when dancers are coming and they are talking about these things, one of the common things as well is the fact that they're not being heard at their dance company, or what they're experiencing is being minimized. And so we have to recognize, again, it's the team thing here is important. What are we missing when we're looking at our dancers, when they're presenting, when they're coming into class? Stress presents itself in so many different ways. Mm-hmm. Dr. Blessyl can talk to this as well. Muscle tension, aches and pains, skin irritations, digestive disturbances, lack of sleep. There are so many different things that I've seen when I've spent time sitting down counseling students, and I'm realizing, oh my goodness, this prolonged stress has resulted in these things that you are sharing now.
Right.
And as a result of that, your capability to operate as a healthy dancer is now not there. So it really is, it's compromised, exactly. So what dancers need is to make sure that they have a team, whether that team, as I said, has a counselor, a chiropractor, whatever. Dancers need a team that is bigger than their teacher and their parents or their guardians.
Michael Phelps is what came to my mind when Nicole was talking about a team and you were mentioning a team. We all recognize the value of a team, and Michael Phelps, you know, he's an Olympic swimmer, one guy, but he rolls with a bus of his coaches and his trainers and his massage therapist and like there's a whole system of people that all coordinate because they understand the importance of keeping his body healthy. And I find that we have so many examples of that in the sports world that parents can just grasp. They can turn on the TV and just say, wow, like look at our Canadian Olympic team. When they were overseas in Korea, there were, you know, maybe 100 of them or so. Maybe a third of them were actually athletes. The rest of the team were their trainers, were the people that were helping make the machine go and helping them repair and all that stuff. And like you mentioned before, the dance world has just said, no, we're not interested in any of that. And I don't understand why that is.
Because not all places in the dance world.
That's true, not all.
What I'm concerned about is that if we are going to train, and not everyone is going to be blessed to have Miss Blessyl, but they could. You might want to contact me and I can get you Miss Blessyl's information. But anyways, not all studios can afford to have the luxury of having somebody like Blessyl on their team. So what are we talking about here? Connecting, making a little network of dance professionals that you could, or people that work with dance professionals that you could talk to. Something maybe I can think about doing, putting together. Mentorship for dancers. Mentorship for dancers of color are so important because most of the time when you are in some of these bigger spaces, there aren't the people there, the teachers there to help support you in that way. And again, like Shawn was saying, you know, having that big bus of people around you, if that is your goal and your dream to be a dancer, then know that it's more than just going to that class for 12, 15, 20, 30, 40 hours a week. That there is all those other elements that come with it as well. I'm just going to ask you guys before we end here. We've brought up so many really interesting points about, and mainly in the competitive dance world, if you are a child that just wants to dance and have fun, then the need of having all of those other types of people around you may not be in your best interest. But we are talking about the dancers, and to parents right now who you have a child that is 9 or 10 or 11 that are dancing 20 hours a week. They need support. They need support. And you need to be able to speak to the people who are with your child more than you during the week in a way that will be able to allow you to empower that child and to help grow that child if they choose to go in the direction as a dancer. I see way too many dancers, and maybe you all can add this to this, that end up stop dancing before they've even really started. And it breaks my heart every single time I see it happen when I find out, you're not dancing anymore? Why? Does anybody else want to add to that? Great.
I'd like to, share some of that because you're right on. And I really wish we could continue this conversation again and again and again. To address the kids, for example, that they leave dance, you know, they usually around 17, 18, it's their final year and they're done and they're burnt out or they're exhausted or they're depressed or they're injured or a combination of all of those things. Everything that we become, you know, has been systemic over years and years of our life. if we now incorporate systems and scheduling in the schools that allow them to have the opportunities to address their bodies, to communicate. We spend, or many schools will spend thousands, tens of thousands of dollars annually on a faculty of 15 dance instructors, and not one of them has anything to do with the conditioning of your body. Maybe we can consider having that in the schedule. So you've got on Saturday, or sorry, let's say Monday, you have your ballet, then you have your conditioning class of some sort, then you have your jazz. Then on Tuesday, you have your tap, then you have your massage therapist come in, and then you have your acro. And then, so you put it in the schedule. And that way now, the students are more aware of all these services. The parents are more aware as well. And if you're going to be spending as a school owner the money to have all these teachers, you might as well spend the money to have at least one person who's a professional who can actually help, you know. And obviously you only have maybe an hour a week with this one professional and then another hour with another, but it's an hour that adds up. 1 hour every week times 40 weeks, that's 40 hours that could prevent your child from having any sort of patella injuries. That can prevent your child to have any sort of mental breakdowns over the long run. And I think it's important that we understand there's no quick fix, but if we dedicate enough time and implement that throughout each week, throughout each month, throughout each year, now you have professionals that are able to catch things. Oh, I noticed that little Susie, I keep using Susie, she's really popular today, but little Susie, I noticed she's rolling in. She wasn't doing that before. Maybe there's something I can look at. Or I noticed, so-and-so's hip is out of alignment. Or I noticed that so-and-so's mood, they used to be really energized, but now I'm sensing something. And as artists as well, we are all intuitive. So we're able to pick up on the flux of energies in people too. Other practitioners are equally as intuitive. And if we get the opportunity to have practitioners in that see these children and teens develop over months, over years, then guess what? It wouldn't be a surprise if they all said, or many of them said, I'm still excited about dance. I don't have any injuries. I'm actually happy. I love being with my team. I can't wait to get on stage. And they are now looking forward to being a professional, perhaps, going to these auditions, having the confidence because they now have had the sessions to discuss whatever is going on inside their mind with counselors. They've had their spine looked at, so now their alignment is feeling great. They've had, oh my gosh, wow, they've learned how to breathe, so now they have more energy, right? All the stresses that were affecting different things are now disappearing. And over time, they are now a well-rounded human, not just a well-rounded dancer, but they are now able to say and recognize when things are off in themselves. When they're younger, many times they'll need a professional to say, here's what you got to do and here's what you shouldn't be doing. But because they've been exposed to professional throughout years, they can now assess for themselves and say, something's off in my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
I ate well today. I had enough sleep, but oh, you know what? I've been at the studio 45 hours this week. That's probably what's going on, or whatever it is. They can now step back and say, Mom, Dad, I think I need to see Dr. Blessyl because my ankle is a little wobbly right here. I think I need to speak with Miss Nicole because, my heart is feeling heavy and I really need to share that with somebody. You know what I mean? So I don't think it requires a lot for studios to implement this, but they need to have the desire to do so.
So that's a good segue for me to say, where do you see dance in the future or the studio setting in the future? Do you see us continuing on the same road of burnout? Or is there, and I say that honestly because I do recognize that not all studios do it this way. I worked at a fabulous studio with a wonderful woman who who was doing all of these things for her students, was very mindful of children's bodies. And I'm not saying this happens everywhere, but the sad thing is that it is happening. It's happening a lot more often, and it is directly affecting children. And I don't want to see somebody lose that passion for dance. So how do we get some balance back there, guys? Where's the future for dance in dance studios? Blessyl, you want to start, hun?
Yeah, and I think because of the trend with TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and we have all these sensational dance professionals and pre-professionals that have made a name for themselves, which drive the dance business. They are the influencers that are driving this train. I think this panel is a great example of, we have former professionals here and still working professionals that understand the heart of it all. Everybody here and professionals and beyond need to talk about their team, of what's keeping them sustainable. And part of the work that I've done is, what is it for a dance artist? I've set up interviews. What's making you thrive? The sustainable dance artist, the sustainable performing artist. There's all these, you know, you can see I can see all Instagrammers where they're kicking and doing this on like New York street and all this stuff, fantastic. And they'll talk about the martyrdom that comes with having a hip replacement and all this stuff and working, but they are seeing people, or they're choosing not to see people. And the martyrdom needs to stop. Mm-hmm. Because that is what's influencing this train and of toxicity because really at the end of the day, dance is a spiritual experience. And you have to be in alignment with the physical body and the emotional body and spiritual body in order to connect with the music to tell the story. This is an ancient practice that has been modernized. Ballet tells stories, tap tells stories, cultural revolution, stories about, we can get into that.
No, I was going to say, we'll talk about that.
This is what I'm saying, is that the professionals, the influencers, the TikTokers, all this stuff, let's create a revolution to change the narrative, to drive this train that's going the other direction.
Yeah,
this is to be done, because kids and dance parents, they only go with what's trending. Yeah. And trends are constantly changing.
What influence would you like to have on this art form? What would you like for your personal legacy to be when it comes to helping other young future dancers? What would you like to give and offer of yourself for them?
Wow. What I just want to give is my truth. That's what I want to give. I want to share with students what my mistakes were growing up. That's what I want to share with them. I want to share what my mistakes were. I want to share what my successes were. I want to be honest about my growth, my development, because I feel like when I look around this panel of individuals who I have so much respect for, every single one of us has a history of memories and experiences that are valuable enough to pass on to those who are coming up behind us. So the legacy that I want to leave, I want to be able to share that voice with them. I want to encourage students to remember the importance of their diverse voices as well. Because for many of us, and some who are seated right here in this conversation, we've spoken about the fact that for some of us, our experiences, for example, of people of color, we've experienced our voices not being amplified. So for those students that are walking into spaces that are students of color, for them, I want to remind them that their voices have purpose and their voices have meaning. I want to, there's so much, this list is long. I want to be able to walk into spaces that recognize having the conversation around traditional dance forms is key and important, because for some of us, we grew up learning only ballet is the foundation, only ballet is the start, only ballet is where we have to start in order to be able to transition to other dance forms. So I want that conversation to open up as well in dance companies so that we can start hearing about the other traditional dance forms that have had a huge impact on dance that for some reason, well, I know a lot of the reasons, but we don't have time for it today, have been left out of competitions and out of dance spaces because there's a different type of thinking that's taking place. So the legacy, Rhonda, that I have so much to add with that, but I would say that for me, what's most important is that dancers are operating in a safe space where they know that their voices are important, where they know that their feelings and their emotions, their concerns are not being minimized. And yeah, I could go on, but I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it there.
What about you, Linette? What would you like to leave or have as your legacy in the dance world, and what would you like to contribute?
Wow, leave as a legacy. It is a very big question.
Big.
I think one of the biggest things, not necessarily to answer that legacy part of the question, but in terms of what we've been talking about tonight, I don't have any kids at my studio who train for 30 hours a week. It is a lot. And honestly, I can't see that being a healthy or sustainable thing to have. If you have a child who is in class from 5 to 9, Monday to Friday, that's every single day, that's only 20 hours. How are these kids hitting 30 and 40 hours? Are they there all day on Saturday? Are they coming at 4? Like right after school until they go to bed? That is too much. It really is. And I think, some of that change, where does it happen from? I know a lot of the issues we've talked about tonight have been questions that I've had to say for myself, like what do I want for my studio? I don't offer any child the ability to take classes for 20 hours or 40 hours every week at my studio. I'm closed on Sundays, but deliberately, like I need a break, they need a break. You need a day that you're not dancing 7 days a week. It's honestly, it's too much. I know when it comes to costumes, we've talked about that tonight, and a lot of that comes from the teacher or the directors because we are choosing the costumes. So what kind of a studio culture do I want to have? What kind of costumes do I want my students in? Do I want them presenting in? Then I have agency in that. I can decide what I want to do with that. When it comes to costume companies, there have been some over the years as their offerings have changed that I've kind of had to say, I can't order from you anymore. The makeup choices, I used to give like hair and makeup notes to every class, and I used to not do the sort of 3 and 4 year olds because I was like, well, put your hair in a ponytail or whatever it's going to be for the young ones because they're little. They don't need these giant headpieces. I don't want false eyelashes on a 3-year-old. I eventually started making hair and makeup notes for my 3-year-old classes that basically say, please don't. We have the agency and the power to do some of those things. And I think sometimes we have to recognize that we do have choices. It's really easy, as you were saying earlier, like we got pulled along in this thing. You get sort of sucked into the machine of like what we think dance is supposed to be. And we have to be able to say, these are the choices I want to make for like my actual children, or these are the choices I want to make for the kids at my studio or for the culture of my studio. And I really think dancing 30 hours a week for a 9-year-old is ludicrous. I don't think that is healthy. I don't think that's safe.
I was just going to say that I think that it sounds to me your legacy is changing the culture of what dance.
Small studio at a time.
But with the integrity that you have with running your studio, the idea of creating a space that you feel is more kid-friendly, family-friendly, more student-centered, that is what you want to continue to provide, that you're not allowing yourself to get sucked into the other direction. Because it's very easy to get sucked into the other direction because that direction can sometimes bring profit. So you have to make those decisions. Am I going to drive the Maserati or am I going to drive the Ford?
Or ride a bike, which is
right, or ride a bike. Yeah. Shawn, what about you? What would you like to, what influence would you like to have going forward? And what
Yes.
legacy would you like to create?
Wonderful question. I would like boys to know it's okay to wear a shirt, because I'm finding I'm watching all these contemporary pieces. What happened? Was there a sale on no shirt, or like they all feel like it's just, no, not even something, just pants. It's just like boxers. What happened there? At what point did that evolve so that guys now are also being sexualized
Yeah.
at 11? It's okay for a homeboy to wear clothes. I want girls to know it's okay to wear pants. We were talking about earlier, like there's no reason for you to have, the like teeny, underwear and the thigh highs when you're 8. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I would like to continue sharing that. But I really want dancers to know of their significance. I want them to know that they're valued and they matter. And we've all recognized this shift where the esteem is going downhill. And I want to be a voice that encourages and uplifts dancers, all humans, but dancers, as we're talking about dance, that they know that they're valued, they're respected, they're loved, and they're equal. They are just as important in a recreational situation as the competitive dancers are. And I see the vibe difference. I see the rec kids who are just, well, I don't know if I matter because, like we mentioned earlier, we can't bankroll the competitive side, but I love dance.
Yeah.
But I don't get any acknowledgement or any recognition, or very little, I should say very little, from my teachers, from my school, from maybe even like the other competitive groups, because there's, company A,
Yeah.
but I'm in company E, or I'm in company F, or whatever it is, right? And so there's all of these different levels of worth that are lacking. And I just want to be able to let them know that you do matter and you can contribute. You have so much to offer. You are definitely a person who, can light up a room. You have influence with your friends and your family loves you. And that's what dancing is supposed to be about. Bringing out all of that love from within and just sharing it on a stage.
Yeah.
It's not complicated.
No.
We've, seen this overcomplication of the dance machine over the years. But if we were to backtrack, decades ago, we would just be loving life because you just see a dancer get on and live their best life. When I'm judging now, I am still so excited when I see dancers come out and they're just living their best life.
Yes.
It's okay for me if their technique isn't stellar. It's okay if they're not the best turner. But if they come out and they share their heart with me, and you can see it in their eyes as well, we mentioned earlier, that they are getting so excited to just be here and just to say, hey, Shawn, hey, judges, I just like dancing. I just want to be on the stage and I'm just going to do this dance. You have my heart every single time. And I want dancers to know that it's okay to just dance because you love to dance, not dance because your parents are making you do it because of their own reasons, not dance because their teachers are putting you on the stage for their own reasons. Forget them. Who are you? Show us who you are. Show us that you matter. You are important and you are valuable. That's what I want. I want them to know that significance is for all of us.
And Blessyl, what is the legacy that you would like to leave behind? What is your contribution to the dance community?
The legacy that I want to instill is to always remember that dance is somatic work. Dance is rooted in the body. And so if you are not aligned physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, then we have defeated the purpose that dance tells stories, unlocks joy. It creates the energy from one heart center to the audience heart center. And so I can talk about the biomechanics and all of that, to improve facility and performance. But what I'm really trying to do is to make sure that all performing artists are sustainable and thrive so they can continue to tell these stories, continue to spread joy, continue to evolve culture in a positive way. And that's it. That's it.
That's beautiful, because honestly, that's what this conversation really is about, right? It's about changing the culture. I want the environment of studios to really become more student-centered and allow those, like you're saying, not every popcorn pops, right, at the same time, and really truly believe in all the information that you shared today. It's so exciting to have this kind of conversation with like-minded people and people who have been in the industry, who are in the industry, who help others become better in this industry. We're all thinking the same thing. COVID made us think we need to slow down. We need to take time to develop these budding artists. But most importantly, we need to hear them. We need to let them develop on their own right. And I cannot wait for people to hear your voices. This has meant the world to me. So thank you so much for having this conversation, guys. I really appreciate it. And this is TAD TV, and we are out.
Yay.